I guess the first pick of something that I would watch a million times, something I would watch like every day of my life, would have to be, and I love this copy of Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back. Did somebody already pick this?
No.
I can't believe it. This film is like everything, and like especially this jacket. In my opinion, it's the best of the Star Wars films. I grew up watching Star Wars, and the movie means something different to you as you grow older. So for a film that I'm gonna watch like a million times, like I need something that's going to mature with me. Oh, here it is. Big Trouble in Little China. This is a shout out to some amazing filmmakers from Worcester that I know. I'm from Worcester, Massachusetts. And I was shown this film by a guy named Daniel Brito. He showed me this and my eyes lit up. I had never seen anything that was like so funny, like absurd, large scale. It's one of the most quotable movies I've ever seen. I'm going to go ahead and just pick something romantic because I feel like everything else is like too crazy. So we're going to pick Say Anything, which is like a classic rom-com. And one of the first genres I was really into is rom-com, if you can believe it or not. You know, it's just hard to not love John Cusack in this movie. He's so charming. Yeah, this is a really special one. If you haven't seen it, go with someone you love, or if you've just had heartbreak. It'll make you smile, it'll make you cry. Hi, my name is Aiden Payne. I'm a director here in New England. These are my 3 movie picks if I was stuck on a desert island, and you're watching the Film Stock Podcast.
Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. So I think to get started, I'd like to kind of talk about what is a gigantic IMDb, like almost intimidatingly so.
And incomplete.
And incomplete. When did you get your start in the film industry? You're a New England filmmaker, yes, but you also work in the film industry. What was your kind of, I like to ask all the guests this,
Yeah.
like, think about the hero's journey. What was your call to action?
Yeah, great question. I'm wondering, do you want like when I first started like playing with the medium of film, or do you mean like the first like film I worked on?
No, I think, I mean, people take it a bunch of different ways, but I think what I'm interested in is like, for example, my kind of call to action was when I saw Goodfellas for the first time. And I've told this to people before, but that was when I first became aware of like the mechanics of film. And I was like, how do I break this down? And wait, you can make a living doing this? This can be an art form?
Yeah.
Like, what was that for you?
I had a sort of a colleague, I guess, who in college, I went to Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario. So at that time I was away from New England, although New England raised. And this guy named Jack Yan Chen, he's a very talented cinematographer in Toronto still. He introduced me to the medium. I had been working on stage plays in college.
You have a theater background.
I have a theater background. I'm a drama major from school.
Focus on acting or the technical side?
I focused on acting.
Okay.
I wanted to be an actor for a long time, and I fell in love with directing when I didn't like any of the plays that were being produced at the time, and I said, I'll just produce my own play. I'll direct it, and I chose to do the Laramie Project. I don't know if
I've heard of it. I'm not familiar with the text though.
It's a beautiful play, and I especially like it in play
drama,
form.
Comedy,
very dramatic.
Okay,
it's about the killing of Matthew Shepard, who's a young man in Laramie, Wyoming, who was killed for being gay, and the play is about a theater company from New York going there and interviewing all the people from there. And what's amazing about the play that they made is that I think it's 8 actors perform over 64 roles. And so it's like an actor's dream, a very meaningful story that still means something today, that asks an actor to put on so many different faces. And when I was working with these other actors, I fell in love with directing. I realized that the high that I got from like the applause in an audience had nothing on the feeling of getting an actor to a place where they also got that connection. And I felt like this kind of, for the first time in my life, in my like early 20s, I felt like a paternal pride. And I got addicted to that feeling, and I was kind of chasing it. And my friend Jack, who had worked with me when I acted in a film of his, he was like, you should direct this film. And this young woman named Beth Payton wrote it, and he was the director of photography, and it was my directorial debut. And we made this like trilogy of film noirs. I don't have a.
And this was all in college.
All in college.
Okay.
And I learned a lot from it, and we all went on to do pretty well. Like Beth Payton has been writing for the new Dune series on HBO, and
Oh,
she
get
also did
out.
Umbrella Academy, and
Oh shit.
I think she did one of the Walking Deads, but she moved out to LA. Jack's in Toronto, shooting huge commercials for like Nova Scotia, and he did some TV series
For
and stuff.
what, the city of Nova Scotia or the province
For the
province of
province of Nova
Nova?
Scotia, like tourism ads.
Oh, sure, sure.
But he's also done a lot of other stuff. I wish I had his like IMDb here, but he's done a lot of commercial work, but also some TV and some feature film. And then meanwhile, I moved back to where I'm from, New England, and I've been trying to make a life for myself here. And my first couple roles were, being a PA or whatever. I like found my way into like Lifetime movies here,
Hmm.
and as I kind of worked on my professional career, every time we'd get off a movie, I would make a movie.
Sure. But when you were back in college doing those first three noirs, like,
Yeah.
did you know anything about directing, or did you know anything about, I don't know, 3-point lighting
Oh,
or
no, no, no.
none of that?
I knew next to nothing. Everything I've learned about film
Has been what, by doing it?
by doing.
Yeah.
Um, to briefly divert into the other side of my career, script supervising.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'm a script supervisor in the area, and I learned how to script supervise when a script supervisor dropped out on a movie, and they asked me, the director's assistant, if I wanted to learn how to do it,
Mhm.
and they gave me her books, and they said, look at these notes and watch the movies, and you'll figure it out. And so I learned that way. I
For
learned.
anybody that's listening, if you don't mind, because I got to admit, I have an idea of what a script supervisor does.
Yeah.
As you know, I come from the locations background. So if I'm doing my job right, I'm setting everything up so that you guys just get to play.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of watching the perimeters of the whole thing. And, I've produced my own stuff, I've directed my own stuff. But when it comes to the script supervisor, like I'm always working on such small things that it's like, yeah, it's nice to have a script supervisor, but whatever. So, like, can you give anybody that's listening that might
Yeah.
not be in the know, what specifically is your responsibility? And
Hmm.
what do you see as the most important aspect of your role?
Wow. Well, script supervising is a very interesting craft. And I would say the funny part of it is it's most necessary on the small projects. But the problem is you often get people who are so inexperienced as a script supervisor that they're not really in the right position to help you
Why do you say it's more important on the small projects?
because you make more mistakes. A script
Sure.
supervisor is there to make sure that every choice you're making is an intentional choice.
Mhm.
They look at that and they go, well, the other camera angle was like this. Like, this isn't going to look good. You're going to jump the line, or let's say, like, you short-sighted one guy and now you look like you're back to kind of traditional coverage. Like, did you intend to do this? And, I would say 1 in 3 times I make a note, they're like, oh, thank God. But like,
Sure.
a lot of times you're like, no, 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 this was an intentional choice. Like, I'm breaking the rules.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
okay, cool. Um,
Being
but
dangerous.
yeah, ooh, okay. But the script supervisor is there to say like, hey, you missed this line. Is this line important to the story? Hey, you don't have a close up of this actor saying this, or like this look that is just one little action line in your script. You missed this entirely. You only have it in your wide shot. Did you want a single on that for the edit? And I think that like your best script supervisor understands how editing works, and they're thinking about how these pieces are going to fit together. And they're also thinking as a writer, what pieces were important to the script. So the script supervisor and the director are supposed to be working together to be the only people who are thinking about all 3 phases of your film. And I mean, you've directed, like, it's so hard to keep all of those things in your mind while also like doing a song and dance for the actors and making sure they're happy.
100%. So when you're on a set, I want to talk about your professional career as a script
Sure.
supervisor just for a hot minute. But
Sure.
like, are you interacting with the actors? Are you just interacting with the director? Like, is this a very private thing that like you're articulating what's going on, whether it be right or wrong, or are you just talking to them? Or how far reaching is your role as script supervisor? Are you talking to all the other department heads, or is it really you're kind of the conscience of the director and like remind Jiminy Cricket type thing?
I have always wanted to be helpful.
Mm.
I think that that's what brings me to filmmaking, is that I think that I'm good at helping people out and being like a positive force. And
You're full of energy.
Full of energy. People are like, you look like you're in your mid-30s, but you act like you're in your 20s. And I'm like, Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
Please stop talking to me. No, but I have a lot of energy, and I'm a positive, bubbly person. And so I try to help out everybody. And obviously, you get to like the key grip position, and they don't really need a script supervisor for anything.
Sure.
But sometimes they might ask me like, hey, on what line do the characters stand up? Because I need to time a dolly push to that.
Sure.
And so I'm useful in that regard. You know, it's the way I see it is I want my role to be like the person that everyone feels comfortable asking the dumb question to, so that the director is not pummeled with stupid questions.
Because as we all know, the director, their whole job is answering questions. So essentially, if you can take some of that burden off of them
Yeah.
and help the process move along smoothly,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
So Shawn on your podcast
Yeah.
said that he was trying to have fewer people on his set, so fewer people would ask him questions. And I would say just hire a script supervisor, and they can answer all the dumb questions for you.
Sure.
You know, because all those questions in my mind, and everyone has different styles. If I've learned anything over the past like 15 years, it's that everyone does this differently, and nobody's right. But the way I see it is that we are like, as a director, we are sort of like conductors to a symphony.
Mhm.
And everyone has a very important part of the process, like all the way down to PA. But it sometimes is not the right time to ask the director. It's very difficult to answer all these questions. So surrounding yourself with the right people and keeping the channels of communication open and clear on who you should ask these questions to and when you should ask these questions makes it so that everyone feels like they can contribute to this story, and you'll get this really well-rounded story told from so many different perspectives because they all understand the vision that the director has for this story.
Mhm.
So it's one vision that gets shared outwards. And if the director is very communicative with their AD, with their script supervisor, with their DP, the list goes on, producers, etc., then everyone should understand what we're going for. It's
Yeah.
when you don't know how to use those people around you that you get a lot of stupid questions and there's tension on set, but ideally everyone should be a well-oiled machine. And I think a script supervisor, it can be a very integral part of that process if you know when to listen to them.
Hmm.
And
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
I've had directors go both ways. I've had
How
directors
so? What do you mean?
I've had directors be like, they don't want to listen to anything I have to say. And they miss out on things that I think that they regret down the line. But they've worked with other script supervisors that make them mad, and they're sick of answering questions, so they just deny me. They put me in a corner. And once in a while, I wear everyone down, and people end up listening to me eventually. But I see that sometimes they're guarded about their art. And I get that.
In your experience, kind of dealing with those two types of directors, do you find that the ones who are a little bit more cagey with giving answers might be a little bit more inexperienced?
No, I would actually say it's a complete. Every director is so different. I have worked with so many different directors of very different backgrounds, very different parts of countries. Different countries, different parts of our country. Actors who have become directors, camera operators who become directors, writers who become directors, editors who become directors, and everyone carries with them the experience that led them to this place.
Hmm.
And that's where it comes from. Is like an editor sometimes really likes to work with me because they're used to working off my notes and they want every possible option. Some acting directors really don't want you to get too much into they don't want you to get too much into the weeds. They don't want you to distract their actors. So it's a mixed bag. The other type of director I was going to say is someone who listens to me too much, and then suddenly like I'm helping them direct the film, and I'm like, no, wait, no, this is your thing. I mean, I want to, but like, I don't.
Yeah.
I try so hard as somebody who does both roles to like keep myself in that script supervising role. And I gotta tell you, you're right there in like the crosshairs of like when the director's mad, like you're right there to receive it.
Yeah.
So between me and the AD, we see a lot of the scorn because, we're right there. And being a director is a really stressful job. I'm sure you know.
It is, yeah. I mean, God, you really have to have your ducks in a row
Mhm.
if you're going to direct. And I mean that as to, you brought up Yapchik,
Mm.
and we were talking about him earlier. What I think that he has going for him is that he knows the story he wants to tell, and he just keeps the smallest amount of people around him who he needs to articulate it to.
Mm.
And I think that's an interesting way of working. It can be pretty maddening to be a director.
Mm.
But going back to you for a minute, so you go through those three noirs, you have this experience as a script supervisor, but it sounds like, though, based on your IMDb, like you've done a lot more than that. So
Yeah.
what was your experience kind of getting into the industry, like on a career level? And do you have
Yeah.
any advice to anybody who's
Oh.
looking to do it?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that, man, when I was in college, I was so scared. I
Of
had
being on set,
no,
or
of trying to find my way in this world. I was told by every person in my life, "You're like, you're never gonna make it.
mm,
You're never gonna. You want to work in the arts? You out of your mind?
mm.
There's no money to be made there. You will be poor. You will be dying." And it's like now looking back on this, like I'm a homeowner, a very
Yeah,
happy
now that you're in
life.
the union and it's like, okay, sit back,
Yeah,
shut up.
exactly. Like I don't know why everyone in my life wanted to tell me. I mean, it's a hard industry to break into, but especially now.
Yeah.
But so I started out working on. I did some PBS stuff because I met this guy at a ski program for my old high school. I like volunteered, and this guy just happened to work for PBS, and I was like, "Please give me a job right now."
Yeah, yeah.
And he was like, "Okay."
Back
and,
off.
and you know, he saw my enthusiasm, and I worked with him a couple times in some PBS specials and some like. Some nonfiction stuff, and he introduced me to a man named John Stimpson and a producer named Andrea Jemian, who work in Worcester, Massachusetts, which is where I'm from. Shout out to Polar Beverages, also
Shout out
from
to Polar,
Worcester, Massachusetts. Worcester is very near and dear to my heart, and
which I want to get into in a little bit. Seriously, I've
I
got some
mean,
things to say to you about your
if you've got
film.
hours, I will talk about Worcester until you have heard Turtle Boy's name too many times. And if you have not seen Turtle Boy, please look up Turtle Boy Worcester. Your eyes might melt. Okay, so I go back home to Worcester. I meet this guy. He introduces me to John Stimpson, Andrea Jemian, and I started working for free. But back then, there was a lot of working for free. As far as I know, that's kind of pared back. There are fewer options. Like usually when you start in, you get paid. At least I think. I hope.
That wasn't my experience.
You worked for free?
Yeah, I did a feature film here in Rhode Island. It was called Almost Mercy, and I just went in. I saw that they were looking for PAs. I didn't know what a PA was. I was just fresh out of film school, and I go in. I looked like an idiot. I didn't know how loose the film industry was, so I went in like a suit with my hair slicked back, and I'm like, "Here's my resume."
You'd seen Goodfellas.
Nothing on it, and I'm like, hire me. And they're like, well, when you say hire, you can volunteer. And I'm like, fine. So I did 30 days, 16 hours, overnights. And at the end of that, I got recommended for Black Mass. That was my first paid gig.
Wow, that's a big jump.
It was a huge jump. It was a big jump. And I was only brought on as a day player. I was standing in the middle of the night, like 17 blocks away from where they were filming. But I got invited back as a day player and just kind of learned along the way. So yeah.
I think that's good advice. Just the idea of like, you just got to be a good person. You got to be sort of, it's a people person industry, you know? Like, I remember when I got my first resume together and there was like nothing on this thing.
Yeah.
I like put my like college experience on there and somebody was like, you can take that part off. And I was like, wait, but I just went to college. And they're like, yeah, that doesn't matter.
Does not matter.
I was like, oh, okay. Because I mean, I know so many.
Scratching it out.
And I was like, I know so many successful filmmakers who barely got out of high school, you know, and they're some of the smartest, most talented people I work in the industry with. And it just goes to show you, it has so much more to do with who you are on the day, impressing the people around you. So yeah, I worked for free for Andrea Jemian and John Stimpson. And it was an experience working on Lifetime movies.
A good experience?
Yeah, it was like camp.
Yeah. We were talking about this a little bit earlier. The smaller films, they feel like camp. You're a little bit more free to kind of talk to the grips.
Yeah, and
you're a little bit more free to talk to the DP.
Yeah,
and get their side of the thing and kind of explore the avenue that you want to go in.
Yeah, I remember so well because at that time I had only directed I think I had directed one more film since then. It was called Give Up Charlie. It actually won an award for best local short.
Okay,
and I mean
Worcester.
No.
I
somehow got in as best local short for Kingston, Ontario, which is where I was going to school at the time.
Okay.
And they gave me $300. That is the most money I've ever made off of a film I've directed.
Oh, damn.
Peaked early.
Peaked early.
And I mean, basically, this thing is like an absolute ripoff of like Edgar Wright and Wes Anderson, who were my mentors at the time. I think if I had found Fantastic Mr. Fox in that group, by the way, that movie and Scott Pilgrim versus the World, I put those like on a pedestal and I watched them like so much in college.
Well, we also kind of tied your hands behind your back. I'm sure that they're over here in the Blu-ray section.
The Blu-ray section.
But not in the VHSs.
Oh, Battle Royale. Okay, sorry.
But please continue. So you were doing this, the kind of Lifetime movies.
I was doing these Lifetime movies and what's awesome about those, the very short shoots, you learn a lot in that very short time. Back then it was 15 days. I've done recently and it's like 13 days.
Yep.
And there's so these short shoots and I worked my way up. I was like a location assistant to start. Free. And then I worked my way up to location manager at one point, and I had done a couple projects as a location manager to varying abilities,
Mhm.
and I found myself so far from set. I'm sure you understand that
I do.
you learn a lot. You learn how to produce being a locations person, but you miss those. There's so much about the process of filmmaking that you learn being in the middle of the room, in the middle of those decisions. And I'm killing myself trying to get closer. So I become a second AD. I'm trying to get closer and closer to this thing. And I meet a young woman who is now not in the industry anymore. Her name was Betsy Kuhn.
Mhm.
She has a different last name now. She got married, and I forget. I don't know what it is, but shout out to Betsy Kuhn. I'm sure she's not watching. I'm sure she's on to a different life right now.
But you meet Betsy.
But I meet Betsy, and she tells me about script supervising,
Okay.
and she's like, "If you want to direct,
It's
this is
literally as close as you can get.
you are right next to them.
Yeah.
They make a decision, you know why, and you're helping them with that vision." And I was like, "All right."
And I can get paid for this?
And you
Yeah.
and I don't have to be the first person in,
Yeah.
and I don't have to be the last person out.
Yeah.
And they give me a chair with my name on the back of it.
This sounds great.
I was like, what are the downsides? That's like a big flash forward to all the downsides. But it's a really, if you're a young director and for some reason you are able to get a script supervising job, a lot of us who are script supervising are trying to become directors. I mean, who isn't? There's so many people are, but you see a lot. You interact with a lot of different departments. You're constantly thinking about how the edit's going to work together, and you're interacting with actors. I know a lot of young directors are like, how do you talk to an actor? Well, if you're working as a script supervisor, you're helping them with the lines, you're helping them with the blocking, and those are the building blocks of what you're doing as a director.
As your role in directing, I mean, you've directed a lot of your own projects. What advice could you give to somebody when it comes to talking with actors? What have you learned?
Well, starting as an actor really helped. And I think
Yeah, yep, please.
if you want to direct an actor, you should try acting.
Yep.
And even if it's something small, like you're going to give a speech at like a wedding,
Mhm.
that would be a great place to start, just because like you're trying to understand like what the process is of taking words and bringing them to life. And every actor is different. Every actor is approaching it from a different place. I think the best piece of advice I was given when I was an actor is to treat actors as if they're kids. And
Okay.
not in a patronizing way, but in
Yeah.
a way that you're like a parent and you're trying to guide them to success. And you're giving them the rules that are not going to get them in trouble.
Mhm.
And you're trying to make them happy. You're trying to get them to play. And you're trying to get them to believe in this extremely fake thing. I mean, think about like George Lucas and Star Wars. I mean, you got to have them imagine a bunch of stuff that's not there, or like, yeah, Chewbacca's having a chess game, just imagine it, I promise it's happening. And Anthony Daniels really is a C3PO, like it's gonna look good later, I promise.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's about helping them believe. And I think that there are a lot of different ways to do that. You can get in there with them and try to like emote with them, or you can kind of be like more of a strong and silent type parent. But understanding that your job is to make it easy for them to play
Mhm.
is a great place to start.
So, what going down the IMDb, I'm gonna focus on the ones that you gave us access to.
I'll give you access to anything you want.
Yeah. But I mean, you gave us 7 to consider.
I've
So,
got 30.
holy shit, man.
I know. Every time I wasn't working on a movie, I was working on a short that I was making.
Really?
Yeah, every time.
And we'll get to this a little bit more in detail, but I would imagine you're not just working towards making shorts. I'm sure that a feature is probably brewing in all of this.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the question is, am I working on something bigger?
Yeah, are you?
Yeah, permanently and also impermanently.
What does that mean?
I think that I've been trying to find the right project. I was given this advice by a young director named Emily Hagens, who's out of Austin, Texas, and has directed a lot of films. And she said, be very careful with the first feature film you make, because once you start working about making movies as a product,
Mhm.
you're sort of judged by the product that you're making. Like if you're there and you're making like a horror movie, people are going to be like, okay, so this person wants to make horror movies. And if you are making like a teen comedy, they're going to be like, oh, okay, so this person's like a teen comedy thing. And you sort of work towards being that type. And don't get me wrong, I mean, like Steven Spielberg plays the gambit, but there is a success story to be seen in like directors who understand the story they're trying to tell, or the brand that they're trying to tell. Like, I mean, look at Hitchcock,
Mhm.
you're not going to go in and be like, oh, did I watch a teen rom-com? Because I came to a Hitchcock movie, I thought that meant horror.
Yeah.
You know, it helps. It's strategic. So I guess getting back to like, I haven't made a feature film yet as a director, and I think part of it is because for a very long time I don't think I knew what story I wanted to tell.
Is that your stomach?
No, that's the call to a feature.
Yeah.
You must. You're hungry for
the
more
time
cinema.
is nigh, Lemmy Winks.
Lemmy Winks? Is that a South Park reference?
Yeah, South Park.
Very nice. I actually referenced that yesterday. I love that episode.
Yeah.
That's the point. So I haven't made a feature film yet, but partly because I find writing a feature film really difficult. I wrote...
Do you do all your own writing?
No. In fact, to jump ahead, the most recent film that I made, Sound of Fear, was written by a guy named Alex Leonard, and
very funny, by the way.
Very funny, TBS, very funny. But he was a classmate of mine at Queen's University, and he wrote it. And that's happened a couple times. Beth Payton, my first couple films were written by her. But I have written a lot of my films, trying to understand: do I want to be a writer director? What kind of films do I want to write and make? And I think I started making like a lot of dramas. And I found my way coming back to comedy. And if you spend any time with me, almost everyone would be like, yeah, of course you're making comedy. But I think I'm having a hard time trying to find like how I tell jokes differently in person than I do in the camera. And I spent a lot of time sort of understanding that. And I made a lot of films kind of trying to find myself because I didn't go to film school.
Mm-hmm.
So in a lot of ways, making films over the past 10 years, my God, has taught me about the kind of filmmaker I want to be. And I think I'm ready for that next step.
Hell yeah.
I'm just waiting for that feature film to either come across my desk or for inspiration to strike and to write it. And I am writing a couple things, but nothing is quite there yet. I think my current goal is to impress as a script supervisor on a TV show and to break through on like a season 3 or season 4, which is something that has come up in, working as a script supervisor. There are many script supervisors who have gone on to direct TV. And I would love to do that. That would be kind of a dream job for me.
Sure.
Because unlike directing feature film, you're going to direct 2 or 3 episodes a year. Whereas as a feature film, like, you're like going around with the script, like, hey, this is the best thing that's ever been made.
More of a hustle.
Please, will you make it? And then, you finally get it made, and then you have to like sell it. It's like, I've heard that it could take you like 5 years, 6 years, 10 years to make a feature film. And it's like, I want to work. I love working. So I think directing television might be a better way to do that. And you don't write that. So it's more about impressing as a director in order to get to that side.
Well, going back to, the writer director, in your 30 films, would you say that it's kind of split in between, stuff that you've written and stuff that you've gotten received and directed? And whatever that percentage is there an avenue where you do feel more comfortable?
So I would say it's probably like off the top of my head more of a 70-30 split, if not higher, 80-20 split for me writing.
Okay.
Just because for a while there I didn't know any writers who were writing things that I wanted to make, and I knew a bunch of actors, I knew DPs, I just didn't know any writers. So I was just writing it so that we'd have something to film. And there are pros and cons. I love coming up with a story because I feel like I can write something that I know I want to direct. I can write a moment or a visual aspect that I know I want to direct, which is great. But when I'm on set, if something's not going right, it's hard to like split my mind and be like, is it not right because of the writing? Is it not right because of the directing? Which one of these things do I need to work on to figure out the situation? Whereas when I'm working on somebody else's writing, I can go back into the mindset of when I was directing theater. And I can just say, like, the script is genius. We're going to go ahead with the script.
Okay.
And I'm going to make it work, which is it's a better place for me to be, I think, as a director, is like, because I find that the creative solutions that you come up with to work with the writing end up being the magic that you capture on the day. That's the thing that you would have never brought to the piece. It's the problem that you needed to solve. And in so doing, you come up with the unlikely solution that even the writer didn't think of.
Sure.
And that's where a lot of magic comes from. I mean, look at Jaws, like the problems that he encountered along the way.
Oh, they're endless.
Are the things that made the movie great. I think that overcoming obstacles is an integral part of becoming a successful director.
Now, going back to the idea of, writing, producing, and filming a feature,
Mm.
Ace has been saying this for a long time now, and I agree with him. And I want to get your take on this, especially because I'm reading this biography on Kubrick, which was recommended to me by a previous guest, Michael Higgs. So essentially, what Ace has been saying is that the time for the independent films is coming back. Like,
Mm.
it seems like there's a grassroots movement of people who are just kind of saying, fuck the traditional, studio method of doing it. Like, we can get some money together. It doesn't take, an entire city to make a good film. It
Yeah,
really comes down to the story and your commitment to telling it.
sure.
And I'm really inspired these days by this biography, because essentially that's what Kubrick did with his first two films.
Mm.
The first one, Fear and Desire, it was just him, camera, and like the actors. And he
Mm.
had like three people who he hired to carry the equipment up into the hills with him.
Mm.
And obviously he found no shortage of problems
Yeah.
doing that. But then his second feature was just like 13 crew members, 15 cast members, and it took
Mm.
them a while to do it. But I guess the point that I'm trying to get to is, do you feel that nowadays, if you have a good Sony A7 and a Zoom recorder, do you think it would be possible to kind of grassroots independent, like a film, if you had a good idea?
Yeah, it's potentially, depending on what kind of movie you're trying to make.
Sure.
I think that like independent horror, yeah.
Yeah.
If you're a visual enough storyteller, like Stephen Schloss, I think at some point is going to break through using this method.
100%.
He is a very visual storyteller. Cut to, that image from Writer's Block of him peeling back that fingernail. I can't watch. I can't watch. I look away during that moment. I think that someone like that is going to finally get the pieces around him, and he's going to make a feature film that way, and he's going to break through. He doesn't need well-known actors. He doesn't need a ton of money. He's proven that he can do it on like a small budget.
Mhm.
And that is a model for
Do you
sure.
not think it can be done with drama, or
Not without an actor, not without an act, not, and I don't mean like a talented actor. I mean a named actor. Because like when you look at the difference between what Kubrick was doing back then and
Mm.
now, the market is saturated because like what every film professor tells you is like, everybody take out your camera, your cell phone. That is as good as a studio camera. You can make a feature film now.
I've gotten that speech.
Everyone has.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's like, there is truth behind it. I mean, it's annoying to hear, but there is truth behind it because now we all have cameras and now everybody wants to make a feature film. And I'm sure when you're at a film festival now, like they're overloaded with films opposed to being underwhelmed with films.
Mhm.
And so it's harder to break out, I imagine. I don't know. I'm not on that side of things.
Sure.
But I think that for a drama, if you look at the dramas that are successful that have come through, they usually have like a pretty big named actor because
yeah.
that's the sellable part that puts them on the map. That's what, gets butts and seats, like unless you have like a really good hook, but I can't think of one. Can you think of like a good indie feature film that broke through recently without a star attached to it?
There's one that comes to mind, but for the life of me, I'm not going to be able to remember the name. It's about a father and his daughter, and they're on vacation at a resort.
Mm.
And it's kind of told through flashbacks, and you realize that, spoiler alert, I don't know the name of the movie, so maybe nobody will recognize this, but it's her recollections about her last week with her father before he committed suicide.
Oh, wow.
And it was really, the way they shot it, like you could tell it was very low budget, but they were so strategic about the way they framed things and the actors that they got. It was literally just two people in this movie, and they really brought it. Oh God, Jimmy Luke's gonna kill me because he was the one who recommended this movie.
Yeah.
Breakout, I would need to look at box office numbers and if they made their budget back to say for certain.
Well,
But I think that that's an outlier, and the fact that you don't know the plot that I'm describing is probably proving
it tells you
your point.
everything, right?
Yeah.
You see a lot of horror movies break out that way,
Yep.
but you don't see a lot of other movies get out that way. One thing that I am like banking on is that what's happened to comedy? Like comedy is kind of like fallen apart as a genre.
We
Like,
got to bring it back.
we got to bring it back. So maybe that's a place. Like if it's funny,
Yeah.
like it's hard. Just like horror, if you're scared of it, well, you did it.
If it makes you laugh,
You did
it. Yeah.
And for a while, the model for comedy has been like, okay, let's get funny people, well-known actors, a Will Ferrell comedy, and they just try to ride that. But I think it's about time that we move back to something that is inherently funny. Prop-based comedy is funny and can be cheap.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to be done there. I mean, Better Off Dead, I can't say it enough. If I had found it on the shelves, I probably would have put that as one of my movies because that movie is a great example of so many. It's almost like a SNL movie where like every scene is kind of its own isolated sketch that has a loose thread that ties it together.
Hmm.
And it's super funny. And John Cusack is in the film, and that's one of the reasons why it's famous. But I'm pretty sure it was like at the beginning of his career, so it has more to do with the fact that he was a good performer and probably put him on the map.
John Cusack is an amazing
Yeah.
performer. I would say even to this day, although his movies have become a lot more obscure.
Yeah, for sure. But another good example of maybe a drama that you were looking for that's like, how do you make a movie that's a drama with no named actors in it? Like, what about Linklater? He was
Hmm.
out in Austin, so a while ago, obviously, like
Hmm.
was it 90s that he was sort of breaking into
Yep.
80s? Um, and he found talent, but like Matthew McConaughey or whatever, but like back then there were nobody. They were like guys in Austin who were making movies. So I mean it can be done, but like once again, everybody's making movies now. So how do you stand out? I think you can do it, but I think that you need to put on the hat of somebody who's in the business side of show business and think, okay, what is this movie going to do that stands out? What is this movie going to do that's going to excite people? What is it about this movie that's going to be memorable and make it stand out for, in your first step, the festival programmer
Yep.
who's going to see it and go, oh, okay, I got to put this in my festival, so that then when you get like a butt in the seat and you get a producer in the seat, they see it and they go, oh, that was memorable. I see how I could sell that thing. You know, that might help you as a young filmmaker. It's just you gotta. I know everybody thinks they got a beautiful story. Everybody thinks they got a story to tell, and you probably do. And in a different age, that probably mattered. But there's something that needs to be special and unique and honest. The argument can be made that all of this can be overcome if you tell a story that is straight from your heart and is a very unique story to who you are. I mean, I see that as a template to success a lot, but it's hard, right?
Sure. Well, speaking of stories that you need to tell, I think it's interesting in regards to the films that, you provided me
Hmm.
and that I got to enjoy. I think what was interesting to me though is you're all over the place, and I mean that as like a compliment insofar as like you look at something like and please correct me on the names, but what, Wormtown?
Greetings from Wormtown.
Greetings from Wormtown,
Yeah,
and then blank verse.
blank verse. Yeah,
You look at those two and
yeah,
it's almost like they were made by different filmmakers because they're so radically different in genre and tone.
yeah.
You know
Although
what I
they're
mean?
using the same two leads, and they
Yep.
were shot nearly back to back. I think in my filmography. I think.
But
Yeah.
then you look at the other films that you do, and it's I can see what you mean when you say you're finding your voice as a filmmaker. So, what was the process like when you go into those films? What made even start with Greetings from Wormtown? Like, why
Mm.
did that need to get made? What was your thought process when you were writing that?
Greetings from Wormtown means a lot to me. I never submitted it to a film festival, so
You should.
thank you.
I don't know if you're like past the dates where they'll accept them or whatnot, but it's a really beautiful film.
I'm on to other films. We're sending those to
Yeah,
film
yeah,
festivals. But if you're watching this, it's on YouTube. It's on my YouTube page, Aiden Payne Film, and it's a love letter to my hometown of Worcester, Massachusetts. Wormtown is a popular nickname for Worcester, and I made it when I was leaving Worcester. I had lived there for a long time in my life, and then I went off to college. I came back and I lived there, and when I was moving away, my friend Dan Brito was also moving away from Worcester, and we wanted to make a love letter to our hometown. We wanted to tell our story.
yeah.
Like I said, it's
Mhm.
about telling your own story. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And we shot it at Coney Island Hot Dogs, which is like mecca of Worcester. Um, and I chose to tell that story because I was struggling to explain to people what I love so much about my hometown, and I realized that could be the plot of the film.
Mhm.
Is that this guy comes from out of town and he's like, why would anyone want to make a postcard for this town? Like, how do I sell it? And it's about trying to find the identity of Worcester. And
As somebody who's familiar with Worcester, I found it so on the nose in the best way possible because like I love Worcester. And I think we had a guest on recently. I think it was Chris Salvi, and he's like, I don't get it. Like he's from Worcester. Like, he's like, no, I need to get out of there.
yeah,
But
sure.
like there's so much to love about Worcester, but it's hard to describe.
Yeah, and as I went around in my time as a script supervisor and as a filmmaker in general, I've bopped around to a lot of like weird cities. Like I was working in Utica for a while, and
Hmm.
I passed through like Gary, Indiana, and all these like small industrial towns that people were proud to be from, and they couldn't quite put their finger on what they liked about it, but it's a weird town. It's a
Hmm.
town that people are passionate about. And so the film is about my personal love for Worcester, but is meant to play for anybody who's from, Syracuse, New York or something, and, is proud of their hometown, and they can't quite put their finger on what it is about it. And so, yeah, it was about capturing a love. And it's weird because all the other films that I think I've made can be like kind of like slotted into a genre.
Sure.
That film, that's just a love letter from my heart, and I don't think it really falls into any genre. Drama, I guess.
I would call it like maybe a light drama.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought it was also really there were a couple of things that I admired about it, like the whole opening with, kind of
Mm,
the photographic montage that
mm,
then turns into like it hooks you right away
Thank you.
because the photos are beautiful,
Yes.
but they're not necessarily beautiful things or
No.
not stereotypically beautiful.
No, no. It's a rusted over beauty.
Mm,
And that's Worcester. And
mm.
a lot of New England, really. I mean, when you look around at like all of those old mill buildings and you look at all those industrial giants. I mean, I don't if you've ever been to Buffalo, New York, you like walk around, you're like, wow, this place was something
Once.
at some
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
And it's
yeah.
still here, but not needed.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
that's how I feel. Like so many towns are like that, and you can appreciate the beauty about it. I'm sure in 100 years, people will be like, "Oh my God, it's beautiful,
Yeah.
Turtle Boy." But right now, we're in this stage where some people are kind of looking at it disgust, and some people are loving it. Yeah,
Now, how long did it take you to film that? Was that
one night,
just a quick shoot? Yeah.
one night, one overnight, and the lead actor James Gagne,
Hmm.
who was in a lot of my films when I started out, I went to college with him. The lead actor James Gagne ate so many hot dogs that night because he had not learned that lesson as an actor to use a spit bucket,
Yeah.
that at 4 a.m. when we wrapped, he was vomiting like 25 hot dogs in the back in the back parking lot. Like, oh God. Yeah, if you're a young actor, do not eat all the food.
Oh
Do
my
not.
God. Yeah.
Do not.
And to any director who,
Don't let them.
and then to any director who includes cigarettes in your, don't let them smoke real cigarettes. Don't
No.
let them smoke real cigarettes.
Even the fake stuff, I find that to be difficult on set. Everyone wants cigarettes on set. I mean, it looks good.
It does look good. And the DP loves it. It
The
interacts
DP
with the
loves
lights
it,
so
yeah.
well.
Well, let's make vaping popular on in a movie.
Yeah.
That'll look even better than the cigarettes.
Yeah.
You get like a little like, glowing light, you
Mhm.
get the big plume of smoke.
Yeah.
All right, we're on to something. Don't take that. Don't take that. That's mine.
That's Aiden's.
The first person to vape on camera. I'm sure no one's done it before.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So then did you you'll have to forgive me again. I
All
was
good.
did you end up editing it yourself? Like what was that process like?
That's a great question. And I don't think yeah, that's a great question because Greetings from Wormtown I made, I think in 2015. I think. So many films. And it was edited and I didn't have those pictures in it yet, and the pictures that are in a different aspect ratio
I
than the
love when
film.
you changed the aspect ratio at the beginning.
Yeah.
That was a nice touch.
Well, the idea was to actually originally play it on an old cathode ray television like these ones right here,
Yeah.
and so that the full the pictures would take up the whole is 4:3. It would take up the whole screen,
Mhm.
and then it would go down into this more cinematic look for the story, but that you would be overwhelmed by the size of the picture, and that would help you get in the mindset of the main character who's trying to create the postcard. But I there was something about it that just never worked for me. The postcards, I was like, it's just flat on camera because they're still images. It's like,
Mhm.
how can I make them? They just feel like they don't fit, and I got really depressed about it, honestly. And truthfully, like I had troubles with the edit on that one for like a couple different reasons. I believe I had my friend Chris edit that, and I had my friend Jimmy Rudolph, who ended up editing a lot of my films, help re-edit it. But it wasn't until I got my wife involved with the project, who is an animator, that I kind of figured out how it all worked together. And in 2020, when we were all sitting around, she and I worked on those postcards to add movement to them by writing on Greetings from Wormtown in different ways that encapsulated the vision that each one of these characters has for the town.
Mm.
And so that finally got it to a place where I could finally get the monkey off my back and just put that film out there. But that's why it never went through a film festival.
Wait a minute. So this is a lesson to anybody that's listening about, oh God, the process. Wait,
5
so
years, yeah.
you filmed it and then you weren't done with it for 5 years trying
know.
to figure out what that thing was that you needed.
And I was so embarrassed about it. And the sound was really bad. The guy who did the sound mixing for that film wrote me a message being like, Aiden, I'm done with this industry. I really messed this up, man. Like, it wasn't
Because of that project?
Because of that project, I
No.
think. He said it. He was like, I got it. He sent the craziest message to me. He was like, I need to be a better person. I need to be a better boyfriend. I need to be a better taxpayer. I was like, what?
Wow.
So anyway, he dropped out of the industry, and the whole thing was a mess. And I was trying to clean it up. I did the sound editing. And it just took a long time. I had to teach myself a lot of stuff.
Mhm.
For the longest time, I was a director and a script supervisor. And at that point, with that film, in order to finish it, which is the only film that I have not finished like right away, I had to learn a lot of other things.
Mhm.
And it's something that I took with myself as a filmmaker after that, is that I was like, I want to learn how to do everyone's job. Because, not only will that help me communicate with these people, but I'll have an understanding of like what it is they're doing. And I can figure out like how to play with that sound from the symphony, to go back to that metaphor. Like,
Sure.
how can I use a grip package to the best of my ability? If I'm looking at like a techno crane, like what can I do with that that'll be exciting and nuanced, And by learning how to use that tool, it opens up a whole nother phase of storytelling to you.
Yeah, it expands your palette.
And so if you look at my films that I did with the Luongo Collective, which is a sketch comedy group in Providence, those films, I'm doing a lot of the stuff behind the scenes. Like, my friends are like actors mostly, and I like kind of brought everyone together to do these things. So I forget which ones I sent you. The plant.
So we got, and again, forgive me, the name, the one with the production assistants. We got
But
that
filmmaking,
one.
that was one of my first films that I made on
Filmmaking, that
a
was
day
fun.
off from a film. We shot it for 1 hour. And
I was going to say, because how did you, obviously you filmed it at Magic Hour, but it's very consistent in your 3 angles. So yeah, just an hour.
Just an hour. It was 1 hour, and we shot it on the set of a Lifetime movie that I was working on. So those director's chairs were part of it. And,
Yeah.
it was wild. And that thing played at a ton of film festivals. It was amazing. But you make a 1-minute short, it plays anywhere.
Yeah.
And I took that model and I ran with it when I went to the Luongo Collective. And I think, which are the ones I sent you?
Luongo Collective, we actually didn't get the link to that, but we got the description. Really? No, it wasn't in there.
Oh, no way. Well, you should check it out online. I've made like 8 films with them, 9 films with them. These are things that we like would do on the weekend. And like,
you said it's mostly sketch comedy?
It's all sketch comedy. It's all sketch comedy, which is where I found out that I was like, oh, like this is the tone that I'm trying to hit. Like, I'm having fun coming up with, like, we did this sketch called Year of Revenge that we did during 2020. And everyone has masks on because we thought that was the appropriate thing to do. And we were like trying to understand, like, what was it about the year 2020 that really sucked? And we're like, what if we like tied up literally like a puppet version of the year 2020 and tortured it to death? And so it's about these friends who come together and you're not sure, like, they're doing something very nefarious, and then they open up their garage door and there's like a weird puppet version of 2020, and they like take a cheese grater to it and they stab it and they hit it with a bat, and all these effects are how we're so fun to create. We take a chainsaw to it. And so I shot a bunch of like colored fabric and styrofoam bits that were colored red out of a leaf blower in slow motion to give the effect of like the guts of a puppet being ripped into. And like, that was my first foray into special effects. And I was like, whoa, like, and I fell in love with the puppetry of it all. And then, so my next film with them, it was probably like 5 films from then, I did a film called The Plant Mechanic. And we had this plant that is a puppet, not unlike Little Shop of Horrors. And it's sort of haunting this girl who's like realizing that she needs to do more about her carbon footprint. I released it for oh my God, Life Day, Planet Day. What is it called? Earth Day.
Earth Day. Yeah.
I'm a big believer in the planet. I don't remember the day, Earth Day. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it influenced me in a way that really opened up my mind to the different ways to tell a story. And I'll never look back from just teaching myself like every little job on set, editing my own projects. There's one I did called Love in the Time of Corona. which is another film I did during 2020. Because like, what else are you gonna do? And it was just me and my wife behind the camera and 2 actors. We all got tested before we shot the thing. Masks were on almost 100% of the time, except for a couple shots where people aren't talking to each other. And it was, like a rom-com about like, how do we connect in a time where we're not supposed to be connecting?
What was the answer that you found in that movie?
Foot sex. There is a like 30-second long shot of these 2 people like having like intimate game of footsie.
Okay.
Because that would be safe, right?
I guess so.
And so choreographing the foot sex scene, a lot of fun. But it's like one of those things where I started thinking outside of the box. I was like, actually, that would be funny. And that became like, and the film is like so because I had to do everything. I'm not a cinematographer.
Yep.
My camera is it's like a Canon 60D.
Okay.
We should not be shooting on that in this day and age.
No.
But it was what I had. It was 2020, and I didn't want to involve too many people. And I learned so much about cinematography from doing it myself. And so, yeah, I can't say enough that teaching yourself these things will open yourself up as a filmmaker. And you should never say to yourself, like, I don't know how to do that thing. That's not my specialty. I'm going to put that on you. Like, that's your thing to figure out. I used to do that as a filmmaker. And I think that one of the best things that I've learned in my time is that understanding what somebody does intimately is such a avenue to success.
I do. Yeah, we had a guest on. I think I already mentioned him, Mike Higgs, and he blew me away. He was like, "Yeah, I shot a feature film, and it was." He said it's shit. he like hit it in the vault. But I was like, "What was the process like?" He was like, "I did all the post production. I didn't know anything about editing. I didn't know anything about color or sound design. But because I didn't know it, I felt like I needed to run towards it and learn that thing so that on future projects, you can, as you said, communicate more effectively with the people who are going to be taking on that role." Yeah. Speaking of no, please.
I was going to say, learn everything.
Learn everything.
Teach yourself. YouTube everything.
But speaking of things that I don't know, there is so much going on in blank verse.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean that in the highest form of praise.
Yeah, sure.
Are those all practical effects? I mean, actually, Alex had a good way of putting it earlier before you got here. We were talking about how the edit was almost a character in and of itself.
Yeah.
And you've got a lot of, like, I guess I'm thinking the one shot that really comes to mind is how you kind of transition from the real world over into this like, dream prison.
Uh-huh.
And there's also that shot with the broken glass that's kind of expanding and his reflection is in it. So you had a lot of effects in that film.
Yes.
Where did that film come from in your head, and how was that process?
I love that film, and I think it's actually going to be playing at some film festivals in
Is it
the
more
next
recent?
coming month. No, I made that, I think 2017 or something like that. We shot it in Woonsocket.
Okay.
And I threw a lot of money into that one. You can tell, right? I mean, it's shot a little bit nicer. It's squeaky clean. Whereas like some of the stuff I did with the Luongo Collective is like a little bit more like, indie cinema. But this was done really well. It was shot by Nolan Ball. It was lit by Jesse Goldberg, who's a fantastic gaffer. The sound was by Jason Furberg, who's done some of M. Night Shyamalan's movies. I got away with bringing on people who I met in what we do for a living into my independent film world, and I think it shows.
It certainly does.
It's a very well shot, well composed film. I think that perhaps making it about the actor's process of taking on Shakespeare's Hamlet was a little too heady for film festivals, and I think like a common public.
Why do you think that?
Well, it just got rejected from like everywhere, shape, and form. I've had something like filmmaking, a 1-minute comedy that has like a cute punchline that plays at like 20 film festivals. It gets runner up, audience awards and stuff. It's easy to program. It's easy to enjoy. But like this thing was still under 10 minutes, I think. And it's just, I think it's like a little bit too much to sink your teeth into. It's a little too, I don't know.
I like the central. I mean, I know you just said that it was really about the actor's process, but especially taking on, arguably one of the biggest literary characters that's ever been created.
Yeah.
But there was something also in it that I found to be a little bit more universal, which I would imagine would resonate with people. And it's this idea of identity. That's what I took away from it.
Sure. Yeah.
Was kind of understanding yourself, not only in a role, but in reality.
Yes. I mean, it's meant to play on the same ideas as like kind of Black Swan about, the the core idea of the to be or not to be speech is about committing to existence, right? Which is also a struggle of the actor to commit to a role.
The fantasy.
Exactly what we were talking about earlier. We need to be kid. You need to commit to this fantasy thing that's happening. But there's also sort of a line there, because if you commit to being a suicidal character, like, you don't want to go Heath Ledger on the whole situation. You know what I mean? Like, so there's got to be a sort of balance there, and that's sort of what the film is about committing to sort of a fantasy, and how that could be a dark place for you to go to, and
people didn't receive that well.
Yeah, I know. So I'm going back to comedy.
Yeah.
I belong there. But I like it. I came from drama. I had studied that speech a million times. And actually, when I premiered it at the Avon Cinema on Thayer Street, for cast and crew and friends, it was a really fun, probably too expensive premiere for my film, but I wanted my crew to see it. So I actually provided sort of like a resource material for it, and I showed after the film and before watching the film again something that broke down like the monologue that had different well-known actors like Ethan Hawke and Kenneth Branagh doing the speech, so that you could like see what the speech was like, and then also like some actors from like the Royal Shakespeare Company explaining what blank verse is, what iambic pentameter is, and they're padding out the way that you speak in iambic pentameter.
Yeah.
And once you see that, I think that it really helps you contextualize what's going on in that film. But yeah, to get back to what your original question was about the effects, it was awesome. A lot of practical effects, a lot of things that came from Nolan Ball's mind and my mind. The idea of creating this, when you see that hand go onto the mirror and we dolly past the hand into the microphone, dolly past the hand into the mirror world, that's Rob Kelly, who's an amazing grip, built a whole Duvetine palace over the other actor, and Jesse lit him in a very different way, and we created just enough room to pass the camera in between those two worlds, and we did a special rehearsal between the actors so that they could mirror each other, and then we played with removing that glass. Like, we had to have a very specialized mirror. Shout out to Laura Foley, who was the production designer, Christina Bauer, who was a big part of the production, and Rachel Bergio, who is credited as mirror tech on that film. Because that mirror we had double panes of glass so that we could do that effect passing through where you see it on both sides. We had the regular mirror, and we had no mirror inside of that, so we could do that thing where we see him getting pulled into the mirror.
So is it 3 different mirrors?
Three different mirrors, and I still have it in my house. I wish I could say that, like, sometimes at night I see Hamlet in it, but I'm not a spooky person. It just is a nice mirror to have in my guest room.
Sure, fair enough.
But yeah, so it was really fun coming up with that effect. One effect that I'm really proud of that's a practical effect is when our main character Felix looks into the mirror and he sees all the different versions. That's practical. The way that I did that, I have never seen anyone do this before. What we did is we fed the feed of the camera into a television that we put behind the actor. And when you put it in there, you get, I forget what it's called, the effect, but I saw it on set one time where, like, if the camera's pointed at a monitor, you get like a limitless reflection of what's happening, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just feeding the same image back. Some kind of loop. I forget what it's called. I'll you can put it in over me saying this. It'll have the term right there.
Yeah.
How much editing do you guys do?
We'll get it in there.
Yes. Infinity loop, something like that. Anyway, so it's playing it back, and then as you tilt the camera, so does the image get really distorted, and you get those heads kind of coming behind him. So that's all practical.
So, all right, let me try and, so I'm thinking about, like, on the day, you've got the feedback into the mirror. It's creating that illusion. What's the camera doing? Are you leveled, or are you on a tilt?
We tilt into it. So what it started out is, and you guys should pull up the shot so that people can see what I'm talking about. But you got
Shawn will edit it.
Shawn, you got this, Betty.
Yeah.
So you've got a double played by James Gagne, who is the other actor in the piece, but we dressed him up like Felix, played by Mike Messina. And then you've got the mirror, and the mirror is hollowed out. There's no glass in it. And then we have the actor, Mike Messina, behind that mirror, and then behind him is a television playing what's coming out of the camera, right?
Sure. Yes,
And
I follow.
exactly. So then
Wow.
as we're starting off level with him, as we tilt the camera, so does the image behind him start showing that he's tilting, and then the image that is also the image tilts even more, right? So that's why it like fans out like that in that beautiful way.
That was crazy.
Yeah.
Wow, to learn that that was practical.
And
That's really
what's cool
creative.
is it came from me being a script supervisor, always looking at the monitor
Mm,
and seeing when, the Steadicam rig is placed on the dock and it's facing towards a monitor. You see that effect. And you can
mm.
see, if you go back through my Instagram, you can see that I took a picture of that on a Lifetime movie that I was working on called The Murder Pact. And I was so obsessed with the idea that I brought it back into my own filmmaking.
So when you were doing that, you're talking about the tilt, did Nolan have a steady cam that you were achieving that effect with? Or was it
I think he rolled it on a tripod. Like he had some, fluid head that was able to
kind of, yeah,
barrel roll. Do a
fair
barrel
enough.
roll.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So, okay.
The last effect is all Jimmy Rudolph. And shout out to Jimmy Rudolph. If you guys want an editor, hire Jimmy Rudolph. He probably isn't available. He's a Rhode Island filmmaker. I love working with this guy. He has edited a lot of my films. I have not been loyal to anyone as a filmmaker. Nobody has followed me the whole way through, but Jimmy's probably the closest to it, especially as of late. And he edited that film, and he did all the visual effects for that film. So when Felix pulls his head out of the mirror and it sort of like sucks, that's a visual effect.
And Jimmy did that.
And Jimmy did that. And then the other effect on the clock that's like ticking with the same pattern, that was something we did by, we shot a lock-off shot, and then we just edited it to go back and forth, So that's not quite a visual effect. It's a pretty easy comp effect.
Sure.
But I'm trying to think of some of the other effects from that film.
Well, let me ask you this, getting away from the effects for just a minute. I mean, this is, it's heavy coverage. I mean, did you go into it with any kind of a storyboard or like shot list? Because obviously it's a very disjointed, kind of almost montage, abstract narrative. Was that all scripted, or was it kind of storyboarded? And did Jimmy want to kill you, or was he like were you giving him the biggest gift by providing him with all of that coverage?
I don't think I gave Jimmy any gifts. I think that Jimmy is the gift to me.
Yeah.
The gift that keeps on giving, and my wife. And we. Sorry, the question was
editing, storyboard,
the storyboard.
Script.
So, okay, when we were looking at making this film, I knew I wanted it to be the most visual film that I had made yet. I was worried that I was like an acting director, and I was like so worried about like simple coverage. You look at filmmaking; it's a wide shot and it's 2 overs. That's it. That's how we filmed it in 1 hour. This film, I was like, no, I had just finished watching a lot of John Carpenter movies. I had just finished watching, like, if you look at like a lot of the mirror shots were inspired by things like that Contact shot, that shot from Contact where she's running and then suddenly she's in the mirror, things like that. I was like, okay, this is gonna be visual. I need to explain this to my crew. And so Nolan and I did some very crude storyboarding, but I involved a guy named Robin McCurrell who works in the New England film scene, and he storyboarded some of these things. There's some really great shots that are on my Instagram of some of the early storyboardings for this thing.
Sure.
And so that was helpful, especially since like a lot of this was like Nolan Ball and I lived in the same different apartments in the same house at the time. So mostly we would like hang out and we would talk through this process trying to figure out what the right way to do it is. But then you had to explain it, and a lot of it was like for instance the infinite feedback loop, I think that's what it's called.
Okay.
The infinite feedback loop was like, I was like trying to express it to him and he couldn't understand it. He'd like, I show him what it's supposed to look like and he's like, but what is the order in which the actor and the camera goes? And so like on the day both of us would like show each other how we actually intended to do these effects, and it would like blow the other one's mind, like, so it wasn't until we were there on the day with the camera that like everyone understood. They were like so skeptical. They were like, this is not going to work. I've never seen anyone do something like this. I'm not trying to say I'm groundbreaking. I just think sometimes you can storyboard all you want, but
sometimes you actually have to be in the room and see it work.
Yeah, and you gotta make people believers in it. And if they don't know how to, be like, no, the camera goes here, and then this person goes here, and then this, and then voila.
Dude, I had that experience with Steve on his short film Writer's Block. We were up against the schedule, like everybody was tired, and he kind of threw this segment. You've seen Writer's Block.
Yes.
So the whole, the guy with the eye patch and he's in the other room. At the end of it, I was like, I don't think you need this, man. And everybody's tired. Like, we're on a 14-hour day right now. We got to call it. He's like, then I'll do it myself. But like, it's got to be done. And he tried to explain it to me 100 times. He's like, trust me, when you see the edit, you'll get it. And I'm like, I don't think I will. I did. I
Steven,
did. It couldn't have, it wouldn't have made sense without it. So even to this day, I give him props for that.
Steven is that kind of filmmaker.
Yeah.
I just finished, shout out to a film that I'm working on with Steven. I just wrote a film called Gimme.
Yeah, he was telling us about that on the podcast he was on, and since he's been here, it's my understanding that you guys have gone through with production on that. How did it go? Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Another film. We did it.
You did it.
I produced it, and the way that I see producing is that I want to do for a director what I hate that bugs me as a director on the day, which is like, I want to take care of, catering and crafty and, transportation and, basically being like a huge location manager, like worrying about all the things that have nothing to do with the art.
You want to set it up so that the creatives can play.
Exactly.
And not have to worry about anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I didn't get to see as much of it as I probably would have liked to. But since I'm a director, one of the reasons I wanted to do that is I worried that if I was on set with him, I was going to like vomit my own opinions all over his film.
Sure.
And I wanted to give him that space. I think he's a very talented filmmaker, and I wanted to have him have his vision there. And I think it's going to be a great vision. But yeah, so it went well. We had a young actor on set, which made things tricky. She's, I think, 9, 10. And Taylor Pezza, look her up, very talented. And I will tell you this, we kept it 12-hour days.
You did?
Yeah, you were saying that you worked with Steven on a 14-hour day. I've heard a couple, everyone's worked on one of those shorts that goes 14, 16, 18-hour days.
Well, Steven's gotten so much better. He really has. Because he comes from a different world.
Different world.
So he would just stretch it. He was so enthusiastic. And it was after Writer's Block when we got into my short film, Odessa, where it was like, no, we're keeping tight 12s. And he kind of has adapted that ever since.
Yeah, I was really happy that we stuck to 12s. And if you're a young filmmaker or if you're an old filmmaker and you're making movies that are more than 12-hour days, really think about that. Even if you're paying people, you're probably not paying people enough. And 12 hours is a really long day. My last
to do it 5 days in a row.
We did, yeah. That was a big ask.
I mean, not specifically talking about Gimme, but
4
just
days
in
on
general.
Gimme. Yeah,
you
and so like, I usually shoot 2 days.
How did the main actor? You said she was 9. How did she? I'm guessing she wasn't there for the 12, or was she?
No, she can't be there for the 12.
No.
She has limited hours. according to like SAG and Massachusetts state laws. I think it's 9 hours, including travel. I finally put that project down, so I don't have it stuck in the back of my head. Like I'm sure Stuart Valberg. Are you gonna have him on the podcast?
Stu was on it.
Yeah, Stu was
I would love
a producing
to have Stu on this.
He's shot some really interesting films. You should talk to him. But he sort of was a advisory role on this film and helped us understand all those qualifications we need for that young actress. But Taylor was great. I was skeptical. My advice to him was like, you need to shoot with a 16-year-old who looks like they're 12. That's a much better way to do this. And he was like, no, she's perfect. And I was like, she's really young. I don't think this is a good idea. And he threw that back in my face so hard after we finished Rap, because she was amazing. It's so rare. I've worked with so many kids and they lose concentration and they start getting hungry and their stomach is rumbling during the audio. Who can relate to that? And it's a problem. But she was perfect.
Yeah.
She kept herself amused. Like it's a story that has the dreidel is a main set piece, and she would just play with the dreidel in the corner. And the few times that I went up there, we would play together, and it was really nice. She's such a professional. She's worked on a couple of John Stimson movies, and you can see that she knows what she's doing.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say we got blessed in that way, because I don't know how you can work that long as a kid and not get off, like lose your concentration. We got very lucky.
32-year-old, I lose my concentration hour 8, so a kid, I'm a 32-year-old and I lost
my concentration.
Yeah, there you go. But something I'm interested too, and maybe this is more of a question for Steven, I could ask him this as well, but I'm sure that you probably had enough direct experience, but the nature of the script is horror thriller.
Yeah.
How is it working? What are the conversations leading up to that when you're working with, a child actor? Like, are they aware that they're in a horror film, or is, the horror taking place after the 9 hours and you guys are going to kind of splice it in?
No, I mean, she's reacting to things that she needs to understand they're scary, that
Hmm.
she's concerned about it. And truthfully, I was not on set for that stuff. I think Steven should answer those questions.
Sure.
But and I haven't worked on my own personal films. I have not worked with kids that much. But the same advice that I would give young directors about working with actors in general is doubly true about kids. You're there to make it so that they can play.
Hmm.
So if they're losing concentration, you got to bring them back into this. One of my first jobs in the storytelling industry is I did children's theater, and we would tour around Ontario and Quebec, and we'd perform this like musical for the kids.
Hmm.
And you would see like, having a kid sit still for like 20 minutes is hard. We had like an hour and a half. You'd see kids sort of like kind of get out of it. But whenever we sang a song, suddenly they came back into it. You could see it in the crowd. It was one of the most meaningful experiences to me as an artist, because I learned like there are things in your story to bring people back into it. And as a director, you have to be aware of that when working with a kid. You need to have moments that bring the kid back into it, fun elements or breaks or whatever's going to knock them out of this, if they're getting bored or
Can't be
whatever.
monotonous.
It can't be monotonous, and it's got to be engaging. They're smart. Kids are smart. You just need to put them in the right position to succeed. And I think also to play off that is, your audience is a kid in its own way. If you have too much of one thing, it's going to get kind of boring. It's nice to introduce like another element, like a song, for instance. I'm not trying to make everything a musical, but
I mean,
in horror, like a visual gag
yeah.
or a jump scare. These are all the different sounds that your movie makes to like bring your audience back into it. Be like, oh yeah, okay, right. I'm back in. You're not. No one should ever get like, okay, I get it. I mean, it works for some movies, but even if you look at something like The Big Chill, which is like a drama with just actors just talking, there are moments with physical comedy, music, and montage that bring you back into that film. And I believe that 100% as a director, you need to make sure that you vary the product you're putting out there.
Yeah. Definitely. To bounce off, I wish life could be a musical. I've thought about that on set so many times. Like, what if the grip department just, started out in a dance number just to like vent their frustration over a 14-hour day?
Yeah. Dance number with the dolly. That'd be fun.
Dance number with, you could even name it that.
Dancing with the dolly.
Dancing with the dolly.
That's copyrighted.
That's fun. So I'm curious also, was what's the one with The Earth is Hot?
Oh yeah, so that's one of the Luongo Collective pieces.
That was Luongo.
Earth is Hot.
Earth is Hot.
I think that's what it's called.
HAWT.
Yeah, HAWT.
That was a funny one.
Yeah, shot in I think 5 hours.
Yeah.
In a park that I live near. No budget.
Josiah, that's his name. I've worked with Josiah. He was on Nosferatu season 2, I believe.
First and last project. He got right out of the industry.
He got out after that?
He got right out. He's doing comedy in LA now.
Oh, good for him.
He's doing some clowning. He's doing some improv. But him and a bunch of those friends of mine, they
were all
actors.
Part of that collective?
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And they're all just improv actors who mostly do improv with the Providence Improv Guild. Shout out to Pig. You should go. They perform at AS220. And, we work together to create this sketch comedy group. And yeah, so like it was really fun to make. Everyone is sort of collaborating together. Like the song at the end of it, I think is really fun. Like the first song is like some stock song that I found online because I thought it'd be like hokey or whatever. But then the second song, my friend Brian Ingalls wrote with his girlfriend Emma Sacchetti, who's a big part of the Luongo Collective, and I gave them the Yin Yang Twins Whisper song as inspiration.
Yeah,
and they turned it into something completely different, and they nailed it. Like, if you go and watch Earth is Hot, pay attention to the lyrics. It's so funny. Like, I remember there's a friend, it's like, don't take the plane, you want to take the train. Because like all of us are a bunch of like eco honks. So we wanted to make something that was like not a like depressing environmental story. We wanted to be fun and like edgy. And, my friend Anna looks like she's naked out fucking the tree. I thought that would be fun.
It was shocking.
Yeah.
That shot at the end, I was like, he went there.
Oh, we went there.
Wow.
Yeah, it was awkward to shoot because that is like on almost a public road.
Yeah.
So like we had like a courtesy blanket up, and it was something else. But that tree is something to look at. It's almost like this Cthulhu tree in Roger Williams Park. It's got all these like really weird suction cuppy looking things, and as you might have seen in the post credit scene, we had a lot of fun doing like some really simple effects, making it look like it was sapping. Maybe we should call it that. Cut to the shot of it sapping.
Yeah, yeah. We'll splice that in.
Yeah, please, please.
Dude, that's funny.
Yeah, it was really fun. And there was another one I sent to you from that group, but yeah, it's all stuff like that, and we would make it in only a couple hours. And I recommend that filmmakers make films like that, because if you're less precious with it, if you're not spending a lot of money and you know it should be filmed in a short period of time, it opens you up creatively. And it can be any genre. It doesn't take long to make a movie. It takes a long time to make a very polished, beautiful film, but not every movie needs to be that way. I don't know if you've seen the explosion of like trash cinema, but like a lot of these Canadian film festivals I'm applying to have like a trash cinema section, which is just supposed to be like bad slapped together movies. And I think there's a lot to be learned from making movies like that. Not to say that my sketch comedy is trash cinema, but we approached it like you would like an SNL skit. We were like, this shouldn't take very long. It's got to just be a really funny premise, and it's just trying to get YouTube views. And we had like a nice like little YouTube audience that I was really proud of. And I think we're done. I think we've stopped making films, but we have like 20 odd films up there. I didn't direct all of them, but we would make like one a month, and we always made a holiday special for about like
man,
3
you're
years.
putting up reps.
Bro, I'm out here. I'm out here, man. I've tried to do anytime there's an opportunity to direct. I'm like, I've done music videos. I shot a music video on Super 8 recently.
What was that experience like? Had you ever done so before? Like, not necessarily a music video, but have you ever worked with Super 8 before?
No, I had never shot on Super 8 before, but a very talented filmmaker, somebody you should all look at, Coco Roy.
Shout out to Coco. She pretty much only works with Super 8.
She only shoots on Super 8. She let me use her camera, and she's like, dude, you're going to love it.
Yeah.
And it was addictive. Freeing, because Super 8 is like, you just need to make sure it's like they're like 3 different film stocks or something. So you just need to make my outside and my inside, don't shoot too dark. And I had a lot of fun with that. It was with my friend's band called Elf Valerie, who's a great singer in Providence, and it was great. I was a cinematographer, and so I learned a lot about shooting film, and I exposed it in New Bedford. I'm forgetting the name. Cinelab. Yep. God bless Cinelab. It was unbelievable. They were showing me like the machines that like Raiders of the Lost Ark was cut on, and I was like, ugh!
Yeah, it's pretty impressive if you ever get to walk around. I mean, you can't just freely walk around there, but if you get to, you pay
enough money to get some film exposed, they'll show you
there. What's up.
Yeah, and they're very cool. And I would say if you can, you should try shooting on Super 8. You have to be really judicious about. Thank God I script supervised. I understood like what I needed from each take and how long I wanted it. A lot of directing these days is like, keep rolling. We're going to do 4 more takes.
Well, you have that ability with digital. I mean, it doesn't cost you anything.
Can't do that with film though.
No.
So like you make sure everything's ready. You do like 3 rehearsals and then you shoot it. That's the way I like to film anyway, because I come from theater. There's a lot of rehearsal in theater. There's not a lot of rehearsal in film. So what was cool about shooting on Super 8 is it kind of like justified the style that I had already had for a while. And we had problems. We lost some of the shots, which was too bad. But like, we made it work.
Did you go back and reshoot?
No. I don't do that.
No.
We're moving on. I'm on to the next one. I barely have time to edit one project.
What about with takes? Are you, I like to ask this as well. Are you a Fincher or are you an Eastwood?
I'm in between. I don't want to be either one of those extremes. I'm like a 3 take to 5 take guy.
Okay.
I think.
And you find that gets what you need out of it?
I think rehearsal gets what I need out of it. And the rest is like, room for error. Like if you're I won't name the project that I was on, but I was on a project where the director doesn't know what they were looking for. And they just kept going take after take after take. And they injured the actor because the actor was doing like a small stunt in the middle of this. And it was like, if they had just done a rehearsal to like make it clear what the director was looking for, you could have gotten that in 3 takes. But just going over and over again, you could hurt somebody, or you could lose the patience of an actor. I mean,
you could burn everybody out.
You're
not
burn
just
a lot
your
of
actor,
people out.
but the people around you. It's like,
so to me, and once again, this goes back to style. Like everybody has their own style. There are no wrong answers. But for me, rehearsal. Rehearse it so that you know it. You don't have to rehearse ahead of time. Just kick everybody out, except for your script supervisor and your AD, maybe your DP, maybe your camera op. And
you're adding a lot of people to that list.
No, that's the end of the list. That's the end of the list. Maybe props.
Maybe.
That's the end. That's the end. Sorry. I'm very particular about, rehearsal, because I do it on the other side when I'm script supervising. So I really understand like what is, I've seen it for every genre. I've seen it for TV. I've seen it for movie. I've seen it for low budget. I've seen it for high budget. And when you get rehearsal kind of always falls into like one way when it's done right. So I think if you can do it that way, the actors all know what's going on. They're not self-conscious, performing in front of everybody. They're giving them room to like make mistakes. Because like the idea that they're gonna come in and just know what to do and get your dumb script, there's no way. They gotta play and give them that room to play. And rehearse it you probably don't need to rehearse it more than 4 or 5 times. But if you do it then, you're gonna be set for the rest of the coverage, especially if you're shooting out of order. If you're shooting a scene and you're shooting it in small little sections, let's understand what the whole thing is first.
Mm.
And then let's go in and we'll shoot it out of order. But there's a reality that this is this fantasy that you're creating, and everyone should know what that fantasy is before you move in and you segment it and you cut it down into little itty bitty pieces.
Mm. Do you mind if I ask you about budget?
No, not at all.
So, you said that for Blank Verse, you threw some capital at it, so to speak. But like, what are your budget ranges? And I guess the reason I'm asking is for anybody that's listening to this who might not know about budgeting or what it might cost to do something. I mean, you've got a wide variety of projects that you've worked on. I mean, would you be able to say, on the scale of your 30, what's your lowest budget and what's your highest, and what you
Yeah.
did about raising those funds or not?
Yeah. Okay. So to answer the question about how my budgets have been, I've worked on many zero budget films, and I really recommend you try to do a zero budget film. Do like the Rodriguez list.
Mhm.
What do you got around you? Let's make a movie out of those things.
Yep.
You got a skateboarding dog? Looks like you're making a skateboarding dog movie.
Mhm.
And I've done films for a couple $100. Usually when you give the people who have nothing to gain from your movie some beer or food.
Mhm.
If you go over 6 hours, you should be feeding these people.
Mhm.
That's usually like the first couple $100 right there. Usually when you get to a level where it's like not buddies and you have somebody who knows what's going on with sound, you're going to have to start paying some people, kit fees or something like that. So everybody who's bringing gear, you sort of have to pay. That's when you get up into like the $3,000 to $5,000 range. And when you're making something in which a lot of things need to be made, I made a movie where I wanted custom costumes for everybody, and it was a 26-minute film, and I had to have a completely original score in which I wanted a real cellist to come in and score the whole thing, a score that was written by Ryan Blake, a very talented local composer.
Oh my God! Shout out to Ryan Blake.
Shout out to Ryan Blake. Thank you for everything you've done for me. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That movie I spent $26,000 on.
Holy
And
shit.
let me tell you, it got into 0 film festivals.
Holy shit. How do you reconcile that in retrospect? Are you happy with the way the film came out at least?
I'm like Meryl Streep. I hate watching my own movies. It really hurts me, especially movies that I wish had done better. Like Blank Verse and The Hollow Men. Those 2 movies, like it's like, I don't know, it's heartbreak. But there are a lot of laudable things about them. I think in some ways, The Hollow Man is one of the best character pieces I've ever directed.
Now, is Hollow Man, just for clarity, is that the 26-minute short we're talking about?
Yes, sorry. The Hollow Man is the 26-minute short that I spent $26,000 on. And I put in like $6,000. And I raised online, I forget. Kieran Slobodan, tell me how much. I think it was like $15,000. Something insane.
Holy shit, that's not bad.
No, and I was like 24 at the time.
Yep.
And it wasn't, it was a lot of thousands of donors. I know a lot of people, and I raised a lot of money, and I feel so bad. I think about it, I want to say at least once a week.
Oh, geez.
I think about how that money went to nothing other than my own education. A lot of ways, a lot of my friends, a lot of my family, and my friends' friends, and my friends' family paid for my education. Because that movie went nowhere. I learned a lot.
And you did submit it to festivals. Was this what,
Sure.
were we on the phone earlier and you were telling me that you submitted one to like 50 festivals and it got into nothing?
That's been a multiple experiences.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like the most recent film I made, The Sound of Fear, is doing really well in the festival circuit. So did
Good.
Filmmaking, The Plant Mechanic did all right. Even Blank Verse got in a couple festivals, but a lot of films that I've directed, sometimes they just don't go anywhere. And it's like, that's why I'm like trying to preach that you got to have something special that's going on, because like we all have great ideas, and some of them are well filmed too, but like, that's not what they're looking to program. There's a whole other conversation to be had about like what films get into film festivals and like if that is even where you want them to go. If you look at all the work that I did with the Luongo Collective, that was never meant to go to film festivals. That was meant to have like an online following. So we were thinking a little bit more about, what's clickable, over 5 minutes is too long.
Sure.
Who's going to be on their phone for more than 5 minutes watching something? Very unlikely. And when we looked at like our YouTube views, like after like 3 minutes, like it goes down. After 5 minutes, it goes really down.
Yeah.
So thinking about your audience is really important. And if you're interested in submitting your films to film festivals, my suggestion would be to think about what films festivals you're trying to get into. There's so many good local film festivals. Like, I'm really jazzed about Boston Underground, but they rejected my most recent film, The Sound of Fear, partially because I think we submitted an incomplete film, but also because it was like a little more polished. A lot of my previous film, The Plant Mechanic, did get into that film festival, and I think part of that was because it was a little rough around the edges. It was more fun, and it felt like, we were having a laugh, opposed to like Sound of Fear is a little bit more buttoned up, even though it's still a comedy. So if you look at the film festivals that you're trying to get into and you make a film around that, or you have a film and you say what film festivals and what brackets of films are they putting out there, you'll be a lot more successful in getting to film festivals. Because I didn't want to put any effort into learning that part of it for the
Why?
first, because you make a film and you're tired.
Yeah.
I don't want to think about where I'm going with this. I don't want to think. I'm like, I made this thing, enjoy it. I never had a producer who was like, oh, we should do this with it. I was always me.
And now with where you're at in
Yeah.
your filmmaking journey, how much do you think about the marketing and the actual distribution of the thing? Is that still something that I'm tired, I'll think about it down the road? Or is
No.
it something that you have more, forethought on?
Like all hard lessons, it came through experience,
Mhm.
and now it is a part of me, and it's hard to ignore.
Mhm.
Now it's more like, I'm trying to do fewer projects that I'm writing, directing, producing, acting in. I've done that. Oh my God, too much work. And it's hard.
I saw your cameo. I
Oh,
saw
yeah.
your cameo in
Blank
Blank
Verse?
Verse. That was
Yeah.
a nice Hitchcock
Well,
moment.
yeah. If you ever go through my films, Give Up Charlie, which was one of my first films, the one that won $300, I'm the lead actor in.
Oh,
And
cool.
boy, it's hard to do all those things together. Not the point. But I think that, when you approach with a film, or if you're creating a film, the first thing is to write it, to make it the story that you want to tell. And you give it to the person, or you look at it objectively after that and you say, okay, what can I do with this? And what does this mean to me? And then I will figure out what budget is associated with it. If it's for a laugh and it's going on YouTube, I'm probably not going to put a lot of money into it, because it's just to be shared around. And if you look at the content on YouTube, it's not like really high budget stuff, or Instagram. You don't really need to impress anybody. It's more about the ideas. And that's cool. That's its own thing. And that might have more traction and more impact on your career than anything you do in the film festival circuit. But I wouldn't throw a lot of money at it. I don't know. I could be wrong. But when it comes to like a fiction film, like for instance, Gimme,
Mm-hmm.
I remember Stephen was saying, like, I've made a lot of films. I want this to be like a performance piece. I want to make something that has that realism, or that the human relationships that make people think harder about film. And so we knew, okay, we need to get real actors involved.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, if you're going to get real actors involved, you're going to get a kid involved. You're going to have to pay them,
Mm-hmm.
So suddenly you're going to have a budget for that. Okay, and then you need to support a kid, and you need to have really nice lighting. Okay, we're going to need a team. We're going to need a kit. So you start putting together the budget based on that, because you know that, like, if you're going to do it right, it's going to play at a lot of festivals, right? And so you want to throw a certain amount of money into that. And look, that's between you and your God or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a sense that you get about, how far can this go? How much is this worth to me? How much money do I have? And in terms of raising money, I don't know. Some people can do it. I've not met these people. Most people I know who get an angel donor,
Few and far between.
well, no, they're getting angel donors, and it's their mom.
Yeah.
It's their dad.
Yeah.
It's their friend's mom. It's their friend's dad. And it's like cool. Like, do whatever you got to do. But like, for me, I did that once with Hollow Men, and I've never forgiven myself for taking that money from people,
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't give them anything in return that was really worth that. And like, cool, like they donated to the arts and this young man, but like, I can't keep going back to that well. I don't believe in it. Like, if you want to do it for one project, do it. That's fine. And if it's your feature, it's your passion project, go for it. You can raise money off of your friends and family. That's the most effective way. I have heard of like a couple artistic grants if you're going to tell a story that's like,
About a specific,
yeah, if you've got some specific demographic you're trying to, produce it towards, you can probably find a grant for that kind of a thing. Or if you're from a different background, you can find grants for, being a young Black filmmaker or a young queer filmmaker. Those are avenues that you can explore. But I haven't seen a lot of success in going for grants. It's easier to get a grant for theater than it is for film.
Sure.
At least in this country. You know, my friends in Canada, they say that's the only money they can get is off of grants.
For film?
For film, yeah.
Oh, really?
There's a lot of grants in Canada because it's a more, you know, they've got a lot more support for the arts in Canada.
Sure.
So
We've got for sure, eh?
Big time, buddy.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Don't you know?
No, they just give her.
Yeah.
Just go out for a rip. So you can get grants in Canada, from what I understand from my friends who are still there.
Mhm.
But here, you know, everyone wants to make art. It's much more of like a capitalist society. And you got to, as far as I know, you got to put the money in yourself.
Yeah.
And so you got to say to yourself, like, you know, Steven Spielberg said that, you know, filmmaking is the most expensive addiction you could possibly have. And I don't think he's wrong about that. You got to say to yourself, how much money am I willing to put into my addiction? What other things in my life am I willing to cut back on so that I can support this addiction? Will my partner stay with me if I spend this much money on a film? And you got to be honest with yourself. And I think at some point, you know, like me, like I'm now trying to work on projects where people split that responsibility with me. Because you can only, I've poured, you know, tens of thousands of dollars of my own money into my own films. And at some point you got to like be like, okay, how can I make this more sustainable? You know, until I make it, you know, or
have you found the answer to that? Because if you do, I know everybody listening right now would love that.
I do.
A piece of advice.
Spend less money on your films. Stop getting Alexa Mini. Who are you making this film for? Like if you're making a 2-minute film and you're shooting on the Alexa Mini, how come? How come? Why?
Yeah.
Why? I don't understand. Like people will throw tons of money at like camera and electric packages, and that matters. I'm not trying to say it doesn't. It's a beautiful thing, but it's like trying to make a pop song on like the most beautiful like grand piano you could buy. It's like you need a synthesizer. Like why are you making that choice?
Yep.
Think about the tools you're using and the people you surround yourself with, and it'll show. If you don't spend money, it'll show. Like, you know, everybody can make a Blair Witch project, maybe, but that's a shot in the dark. It's going to look better if you put a lot of money into it, but maybe it doesn't need to look good. Thinking about where you can compromise, I think will be a really good starting point if you're trying to make a movie that's sustainable. And I think that if you're trying to make a movie that is zero budget, make it fun, make it short, make it with
kind
your
of
friends.
lean into the zero budget.
Lean into the zero budget. I had a lot of fun making the Luongo Collective movies, and we put, I don't know, in total, maybe $1,000 into it over the course of like 20 odd movies. And, you know, that I learned so much doing those movies, a lot. And I think that the quality is lower, you know, if you want to like judge quality in some like quantifiable way, qualifiable way, but it's quantifiable, quantum leapable.
Yeah.
But it's, I learned a lot on those, and I'm very proud of them, even though they are sort of low budget looking.
Sure.
But they didn't cost me anything, and I had a lot of laughs along the way.
So let me ask you this. What are you working on next?
What?
You've just wrapped up. Obviously, you're going to have to shepherd Gimme into post-production and, you know, the festival circuit and whatnot. But
yeah, we're talking a lot about visual effects and what we can do to help some of the practical effects we had on set. So I'm working on that.
But a man who has 30 projects under his belt, if not more, you know, you've definitely got something in the chamber.
That's a great leading question that has no leading response.
Really?
I have nothing in the works right now. I'm actually in this.
You going to finally take a vacation?
No. I think
mentally, so to speak, if not financially.
No, I think I'm at this crossroads.
How so?
You asked about like, what's the big project that I'm going to do? Like, I have trained for a long time.
Yeah, that question usually comes around this time in the interview. I don't know why I leaned into it early. It just kind of naturally came up.
I do inspire the question of, why are you here?
No.
What are you doing with your life? And don't get me wrong.
I feel like, honestly, that's any filmmaker.
Yeah,
like,
I look in the mirror.
We have this, you know, the Hamlet thing where it's like, am I really going to play fantasy for the rest of my life? And, you know, the most expensive art form that I can practice, this is what I'm going for.
I was going for more like Zoolander, looking into the puddle, being like, who am I?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that I'm in the crossroads of, I have a couple feature films that I've started writing. I think I need to commit to some of those ideas and to see them through to the end. Alex Leonard, who wrote Sound of Fear, he is writing a feature film called Hide currently. working title.
HIDE or HYDE?
HYDE.
Okay.
It's about a tattoo artist, a spooky tattoo artist.
Very cool.
A cursed tattoo
For a
artist.
guy that doesn't really want to, I'm getting the feeling that you don't want to do horror. You seem to be drawn into the horror orbit.
It's a logical place to start your career. It's an extremely logical place to start your career because, like I said before, you don't need to have. The first actor that came to mind was Rachel McAdams. You don't need Rachel McAdams, the world's best actress, Canada's own Rachel McAdams, to be in your film. You can get away with just talented actors who are local, which is very attractive to me. And it's at a budget level that's very attractive to me. And the skill set that you need is that you need to be a talented visual director. And I think I've learned a lot about that. I think I have a lot to improve in terms of being a horror director. I have no delusions of grandeur. I think that that's one of the problems with Blank Verse is that the tension and the spookiness of it could be better. But I do think that would be a logical place to start. And there's so many genre film festivals that would love to see a horror movie. So it's very attractive to me. And I think that's advice that I gave Alex. And so he was logically saying oh, okay, so let's make a movie like that. So I'm interested in that. There are a million projects with Steven. Rosario Corso always has a project. He's very excited about that.
I haven't talked to him in too long, and he's been a name that has been on the list for a while to get onto the podcast. I gotta pull the trigger.
He wants to come. You should just ask him. He'll show up.
Yeah.
And boy, you're gonna need a bigger seat. You're gonna need a bigger room.
Oh, he's gonna remind me he reminds me of Al Pacino, where it's he's gonna all over the place.
You're gonna have to be keep this far away from the microphone.
Yeah,
bro, just this far away from the microphone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm always open minded to other people's projects, and a lot of people are talking to me about a couple projects, but. Truly, what the next step for me is I think a bit of soul searching and finding the right script. I have a couple writers that I'm working with that I'm really excited to see the scripts that they're writing. We've been kind of talking about them for a while, and I really can't wait to read them and hopefully make some of those because there's some young writers who have some exciting stuff to say. And now that I've been in this position, not just forget about script supervising, forget about the professional film world.
Just a member of the film community. My God, your web kind of expands.
Exactly. Being a member of the independent film community. Suddenly I actually have people who are coming to me with scripts opposed to when I was starting out. Nobody, why would they give me their script, And now finally people are I want to get this made. Can you help me make it? And I'm really excited about some of the stuff that I'm reading. And so hopefully, one of those projects. And also I've been talking to a couple of the different writers from the TV shows that I've been working on, and they have feature films and they have short films. And I'm when I am not making films, I am now reading other people's films, and I'm trying to find the right project that's going to knock me up to the next level. But, like everybody is here, right? We're all just waiting until we finally get that call up to the big leagues. So, we'll see. It's a long wait, but it's been the dream for a very long time. And here's hoping. Ooh.
All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. This is. I want to keep it brief, but I do want to touch on it because that is your most recent short film that's actually available, not just in post production, but Sound of Fear. No,
The Sound of Fear.
Alex wrote this.
Alex Leonard wrote this, and it just won Popcorn Fright's best short.
Congratulations!
Thank you.
That's awesome.
That was cool.
Is Popcorn? Have you already gone to it? Did you attend the festival? Is it over?
So it's over. It played the same week as Flicker's Riff.
Sure.
So I had to be here for that. So I was here at Flicker's Riff, which is a great local film festival. I don't know, read online discourse about that film festival this year. I'm not here to describe that.
Okay.
I don't know if you've read into it.
Why? What happened?
Google it.
Okay.
But I had a great experience myself, and the films that I played against were excellent films, and it was really exciting to watch this film play in Rhode Island. But unfortunately, it meant that I missed Popcorn Frights, which is in Fort Lauderdale. Shout out to that festival. Absolute great festival. Stephen Schloss turned me on to it. Great theater, great energy. And the great Jimmy Rudolph, who I mentioned before, in order to play live, we needed to send somebody down there to be a representative. And Jimmy got on a plane and he went and represented our film down there.
Goddamn, another shout out to Jimmy.
Another shout out to Jimmy. And he was like, how did the film festival go? And I was like, oh, we got a couple laughs, but a lot of people from the crew were here. So obviously, I was like, how'd it go down there? He's like, people were dying.
It's a
was
funny
awesome.
short. I know
People
I brought it
died.
up earlier, but
Yeah.
it's a unique concept, and it's
Yeah.
actually it starts out one way and it becomes something entirely different. But I like the way it goes.
Yeah, it's a kind of Babadook storyline where,
Yeah.
you know, you learn to live with the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, that film is not quite available, but it will be available as soon as it's done with its festival run. So, you know, maybe by the time this comes out or a couple months afterwards, that'll be when it's coming out on my YouTube page. But it's playing at a lot of local film festivals. It's going to be playing at the Vortex Film Festival on next Friday at 8:30 at the Vets Cinematheque. It's going to be playing at the Spasm Film Festival up in Montreal on October 30th. And I don't know, it's still going through a lot of festival runs right now, and I'm really excited that it's gotten so much response. It's played, I think, at like 7 film festivals up until this point. And you know, it just goes to show you that like a film that has like a catchy premise, that's what people want.
Mhm.
You know, like even like, you know, any genre, any storyline, if the premise is good, it doesn't even matter how it's filmed. Like what I hear a lot on set from, like, you know, bigwigs, you know, like showrunners, directors, executive producers, story is king.
Yeah.
If
Absolutely.
you've got
it
the
is.
right story, if you get the right premise, you can kind of get away with murder. And unfortunately, you know, you can be an amazing writer. It sort of is lightning in a bottle.
Mhm.
Like Filmmaking, which is a movie that did really well of mine, it was lightning in a bottle. I mean, we tried to replicate it. We made 3 more films with the same premise about these 2 PAs kind of working behind the scenes. They kind of fall flat.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're not as good. There was something about the simplicity of the original concept killed, and the other ones are just not quite as good. And it just goes to show you, when you got lightning in a bottle, when you know you've got it. And truly, I mean, it was Alex who knew that this was a good story, and he was right. I was like, you know, film festivals, you know, it's a racket. Shh, I don't smoke. But I was like, oh, you know, you never know what's gonna happen, man. And then he was like, I don't know, I believe in this film, and boy, was he right. I mean, it has played in so many film festivals, and it's winning awards, and it's really exciting. And I owe a lot of that to, I used a casting agency, which I was really happy about. Cast Limo was like a really big part of casting this through Kendall Cooper's casting company, and they helped me cast these 2 lovely actresses in it, Amanda Susi and Isla Magnuson, and they were amazing in it. So big shout out to the actors and to my writer. They were a huge, huge part of that success, and it just goes to show you, if you've got those 2 elements, that's like 90%. You know, like the rest is 10%.
Yeah.
And the same was true about filmmaking, and I say that because I was the actor.
Well, I'm happy for you. Congratulations
Thanks.
on Popcorn Frights. I'm glad that we were able to kind of give some light to that before
Yeah,
we get out of here.
Little shout out.
And I hope that it continues to do well at the festival circuit.
Yeah, stay on my page. It will be coming out soon, as well as some other work will be coming out on my page very soon, because I'm gonna, before I release that, I'm gonna release like 3 or 4 other films that I haven't put on my page yet. So if you like short film, or if you're just interested in, you know, what this fool is doing in New England, stay on my page. There will be a lot more projects coming out pretty soon.
Well, I appreciate you coming onto the podcast and sharing, you know, your story with us,
Sure.
your working methods, your experiences, your advice. It's been really interesting to speak with you. Very, very good conversation.
Cool.
And if anybody wanted to find your work, all of it, where are they looking?
Okay, I don't have all of it on my YouTube page or my Instagram page, but Aiden Payne Film, AIDAN PAYNE FILM. You can find that on YouTube. You can find it on Instagram, and I try to post a lot of my stuff there. You know, I just had this little ad that I made with Ro Corso as the DP, and we shot an ad that was for Coney Island hot dogs that played on the Jumbotron at the Woo Sox game.
Oh, get
so
out. That's awesome.
Yeah, so we were posting that on the page. I'm just, you know, anything that I make, I try to at least do a shout out on that page. So if you're interested in my films, I would love you to go to either the YouTube or the Instagram page, and check it out. You know, a lot of these stories are New England stories. A lot of my comedy is probably relatable, as we probably have met each other if you're listening to this podcast, or if you haven't, I hope that, you know, it is relatable to you in some way. So check it out. And if you want me to make your movie, you can reach me.
Hit me up.
Hit me on that Instagram page, or on my email, which is aidenpaynefilm@gmail.com. I like to keep it simple.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, man.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah. Great to be
Everybody,
here.
check out his work, Aiden Payne.
Thanks.
All right, guys. Catch you on the next one.